Hey there. I offer this podcast freely. Your support really makes a difference. To make a donation, visit reneemckenna.com. Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about progress, not perfection. My experience is that personal growth is infinite because we are all part of infinity. There's always room to grow and expand. And for most of us at this stage, it's about developing the self-searching to determine where that growth needs to take place within ourselves, rather than leaving it to others to tell us how we need to be in the world. True progress is about outgrowing the fear that we are not good enough, the belief that we're fundamentally bad trying to get good, that we're unworthy trying to get worthy, or that we're actually unlovable and that we are trying to get love. And for many of us, just to own in a grounded way that we always have room to grow, that we are perfect just the way we are in our imperfection. This is true progress from my perspective. And like many people, I struggled a lot with perfectionism in my life, but I will tell you, it rarely pops up anymore. Pulverize the perfectionism like they pulverize old cement to be used again for the cement of my new foundation. And it takes a lot of maturity and humility to let go of perfectionism and to be truly satisfied with perpetual progress. It's actually a much more dynamic, exciting, and interesting place to be in progress, to be flowing with the ever-flowing, ever-evolving life force that we're a part of. I think perfectionism is rooted in fear because it generally stops us from doing things. I know for myself, perfectionism certainly stopped me from completing many things, because one of the roots of perfectionism is that we have some conception that there is some idealized form that is perfect, whether that's in how we look, how we act, how we feel, the things we create, the work that we do. We might have perfectionism around how our house or our car, our clothes, or our body looks. Usually how it looks to others, but I know for myself, my own inner critic was much more harsh and relentless than anyone else who was in my life. Nothing I did was ever good enough, and so I was unable to finish. I was unable to finish my artwork. I was unable to feel satisfied with my writing, constantly criticized myself in social circumstances, always from this perspective that nothing was ever good enough because it wasn't perfect. And perfect is actually a fallacy or a false idea. And again, if I look deeply at the idea of perfection, for most of us, it is rooted in this fear that we're not good enough. And this is a terrible perpetual loop, because the subheading of perfection is that we'll never be good enough. And we have to continually strive, like a carrot dangling on a stick and string just out of reach of the horse that keeps it walking. And although perfectionism may motivate us, it is a terribly self-abusive way to drive ourselves through our life, to never actually get to eat the carrot. Now, some of us learn perfectionism from our families. I cleaned houses for a long time, and some of the most dysfunctional families that I worked for had the most perfect-looking houses. And there are lots of little interesting personal growth exercises we can do to break our perfectionism. If you are a woman who always needs to have her makeup done, or a man who needs his clothes or hair to be quote-unquote perfect before you go out in the world, it's an excellent exercise to intentionally push into your discomfort and spend a day out once a week with no makeup, or to intentionally dress in a way that makes you slightly uncomfortable and see what happens. We're pretty much addicted to comfort in modern society. And the problem with only comfort seeking is that it actually weakens and constricts us. And I found it much more beneficial to actually get comfortable with some discomfort. And I find it quite interesting to expand and try to get myself comfortable with some level of discomfort. Reflects the Buddhist principle of becoming free of attachment and aversion. It's very easy to have perfectionism around others. If you need your children or your partner to behave in a certain way that makes you crazy that they leave a mess on the kitchen table, or there's socks and underwear on the floor, lean into that discomfort that causes you. Be curious about it. Occasionally, don't do the dishes just for practice, because perfectionism is usually rooted in an idea that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, even if they're arbitrary and we don't even clearly know what that is. We just know there is a right way, and certainly other people or myself are not doing that. We can get pretty self-righteous, judgmental, and unloving about those things sometimes. So our perfectionism can extend pretty harshly onto others, spending time ruminating on the imperfections of others rather than on their progress. And what we focus on grows in our own mind. Perfectionism is like mold on old food in your refrigerator. You've got to throw that baby out. And in order to lean into progress over perfection, we actually do have to throw out some old conceptions and beliefs and ideas about ourselves, our own idealized self-image that we'll never live up to, and grow in the humility to accept who and what we really are, a unique combination of broken and brilliance. Even though I live in Manhattan, I spend a lot of time in nature at the local parks, and both Central Park and Riverside Park have a lot of trees, gorgeous trees, and I challenge you to find a perfect tree. Each tree, just like each person, is completely unique and formed by their own life experience. If they're in a place where they're shaded by a larger tree or don't get much sun for whatever reason, they might twist themselves in really interesting, beautiful and creative ways to get to that nourishing sunlight. They can form their roots around rocks or through sidewalks to be able to get the water and nutrients they need. And people are like that. Each unique, quirky, interesting, beautiful in our own way because of that uniqueness. Now, certainly there are gardens where all of the trees are planted in a perfect row, all trimmed the same way and spaced the same width apart. It's a particular aesthetic of beauty, a repetition of sameness. And I think I've come to prefer the word precision rather than perfection. I have the great privilege of going to a lot of wonderful theater here in New York and watching lines of dancers all of similar height synchronized in their movements. It's quite beautiful. Perfect synchronization can be particularly stunning, but it's a moment like a sunrise or an orgasm. It doesn't get repeated. It's a pinnacle experience. I watched this exquisite sunset in the Mojave Desert recently. We were out there camping and teaching the teenagers to ride dirt bikes. I love the desert. One of the kids that was with us hadn't been out of the city in 3 years. And in the morning I brought him out and I said, sit in this chair and listen. And you're going to hear something you may never have heard before. And this gorgeous 6'3", totally sweet African-American boy with his awesome dreads with little clips on them. He said, what am I listening for? And I said, silence. And we sat there for a moment in this perfect stillness of desert early morning. And he said, whoa. And I said, that is the voice of God or goddess. Deep silence. And then somebody came tearing up the road in an ATV. And that was a perfect moment, but it's not to be sustained. I had this fabulous opportunity to go see the opera Aida at the Met. I feel so lucky. I live close enough I can walk there. It's only 16 blocks away. And I went with this young German kid that I met on the airplane on the way back from the Bay Area. Might be the first time this has ever happened. He sat down next to me. I'm the same age as his parents. And we talked for the entire 5.5-hour flight, except when I took a little nap. And he's been traveling around on vacation. And it turned out his Airbnb was just 40 blocks north of where I am in the Upper West Side. And we decided to take an Uber back together. And after sitting on the plane all day, I was dying to jump on a city bike and go find a restaurant someplace. I said, you want to take a ride on a city bike and go get some food? He said, sure. And a few days later, I discovered that a new friend of mine is a professional dancer and was dancing in Aida and mentioned that they could get discounted tickets. Hooked me up. So he got me 2 tickets. And none of my usual theater friends could come. And so I messaged Louis, who I knew was still here from Germany. And it turns out this fabulous 25-year-old German real estate kid loves the opera and classical music. Loves opera much more than I do, actually. which is its own unique circumstance of perfection. So we went to Aida. It was so fun. He was quite horrified that they served champagne in plastic glasses at the Met. Really felt like they should have been crystal. But anyway, his own perfectionism. The production was outrageously extravagant. I have never seen a visual set on a show like that. Enormous Egyptian stages with sphinx and temples. They had a parade of hundreds with horses and carriages. It was unbelievable. It felt like there was a cast of thousands on the stage. The music was amazing. The visuals were just over the top, gorgeous. The story was meh. I've decided most opera storylines are stupid. He doesn't love me. I'm going to kill myself. Pathetic. Anyway, there was this one temple scene, and the maidens of the temple moved in synchronicity. These amazing dancers on opposite sides of the stage. And these beautiful young women in perfect harmony, mirroring each other as they performed these different rituals at the temple. It was deeply moving, but it was a moment. Just like me having an opportunity to connect with Louis and invite him to the opera because no one else could go. It was a perfect moment. And from the perspective of perpetual progress, it could be understood that every moment is perfect when we live it deeply. And I mentioned that for me, perfectionism is rooted in fear, primarily this fear that I'm not good enough for who or what I'm not sure. And that is in itself a good question. Who am I trying to impress? Some conglomeration of them that live in my mind. And although perfectionism may be able to spawn beautiful English gardens or precision dance or musical performances, my perfectionism kept me frozen and unable to take healthy risks because I knew that I could never live up to whatever this arbitrary, idealized perfection that I had in myself, in my head. And so I wasn't even going to try. I could see it in my art students. There was a certain percentage of kids when I taught art in elementary school who just couldn't get past their own perfectionism and were completely frustrated by the creative process. They were always throwing their artwork out because it wasn't good enough, rather than just being with the joy and magic of the color, the process, or the medium that we were working with. And that's the beauty of letting go of perfection, is that we can start to live from a place of curiosity, of creativity, dancing on the edge of the unknown of what's going to create itself out of this, interacting with the life force rather than trying to control everything, which calls us out of fear and into trust. Trust that it's okay to make mistakes. Trust that we're lovable just the way we are, maybe even lovable for our flaws. If I had had a perfect childhood, whatever that is, and had had no addictions, depression, anxiety, crazy dysfunction, I wouldn't be the master healer that I am today, and I wouldn't be talking on this podcast. But perfectionism tells me that who I am is not good enough, and that I should hide or withhold my authentic self. That absolutely halts my healthy personal progress. And there's a lot of humility in that, because I may not actually be as great as my idealized image of myself hopes that I might be. And there's a lot of relief in that humility as well, to just be a person. In order to write my book, I had to let go of the idea of how many people might read it and just write the book for the purpose of writing the book. Whether 10 people or 10,000 people might benefit from it. And I've had to trade out perfectionism for good enough, because good enough helps me to make progress. And progress is much more satisfying than perfection. And in progress, there are again these moments of perfection that pass, like the silence, the sunset, or the orgasm. And when we live deeply, we are nourished by those moments. And when we're in progress, we know that there will be other moments to come. And our work is to try our best and let go of the results. And be curious about where that will bring us, rather than having some predetermined idea of perfection that stops us from even trying, or has us imposing our will upon others because we think we know how things should be, or how they should act, because we think we know better. And I have to be honest, I'm facing my own perfectionism with my own artwork right now. My own personal exercise in breaking perfectionism was to stop using paintbrushes about 15 years ago and just start pouring paint. And I don't think my art website is in the show notes, so I'll drop that in today. But I haven't had an art show in over 3 years. My creativity has been going into this podcast and lots of other projects that I'm working on, but it's time for me to make more progress with my art. And I immediately go to this place of, will other people like it? Will people buy it? Can I find a gallery to show it in? And that pulls me completely out of my own creative process and into my ideas, my projected perceptions of how other people might perceive my work. And that completely pulls me out of an authentic creative process and being able to just be or do or express my own unique self in the world. And it's had me a little bit frozen. So I'll keep you posted on my art progress. But I think on the deepest levels, progress is what's happening. God, Goddess, the universe is always in motion through the life force, expanding, creating, dissolving, recreating again, participating in the practical process of progress. Oh, that's what makes us really happy. So I'm inspiring myself today and challenging myself to push into my own discomfort around my artwork. And I've become kind of a progress junkie, making progress getting stronger, lifting weights, making progress relationally and socially, making progress romantically and sexually, to be more vulnerable, more engaged and present, participating in the mysteries of love and connection, making progress in parenting as my children evolve into young adults, needing a very different level of care and connection from me, making progress intellectually to challenge myself to read a little bit every day, making progress professionally to go outside my comfort zone and learn about video and to actually work less and make sure I have enough free time. When I lived in San Francisco, we were on this massive hill in the outer Sunset District, and it was a prime street for skateboarders. And they get about 25 blocks from Lincoln High School on 24th Avenue all the way down to Ocean Beach. And they'd fly by in little packs of longboards. And progress is like balancing on a skateboard. It's a fun and exciting experience. You never know what's going to pull in front of you. You might need to stop. Sometimes you get to go fast. Can we enjoy the ride of whatever particular skateboard and hill we get to ride on in this incarnation? And sometimes we might fall off or decide to walk for a while. We have a lot of free will in this thing. Thank you so much for listening. I'm having a really outstanding experience offering free sessions of my spiritual psychology work in exchange for being recorded for my upcoming YouTube channel. I've had opportunities to engage with people from around the world, which is so inspiring. I have a session with a woman in England tomorrow and another with a young man in Japan later in the week. The Japan time zone thing is funky, but anyway, if you are interested in learning more about experiencing connection with the spirit guide, soul retrieval, power exchange, dissolving the inner critic, spirit release or negative energy extraction, connecting with your own highest self, those are some of the possibilities in this profound and incredibly transformative work. So if you want to find out more about a free recorded session, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. Have a couple of wonderful workshops coming up on Insight Timer. Insight Timer is a free meditation and personal growth app out of Australia. The next few Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, 8 p.m. GMT. Wednesday, January 18th, I'll be doing Balancing Inner Masculine and Feminine. We all have masculine and feminine energy within us. Intellect and intuition, structure and flow, being active or receptive, and cultivating a healthy internal masculine-feminine balance matures, strengthens, makes us vibrant and effective in all areas of our life. So if you have time this Wednesday at 3 Eastern, check out Balancing Inner Masculine and Feminine on Insight Timer with me. The following Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, doing a very deep and compassionate workshop on healing abortion, Recovering from the emotional, spiritual, and energetic experience of abortion is important and possible. So if you need healing in this area, please join me for a very safe and sacred space to bring forgiveness, peace, and compassion to this often secret wound. And Wednesday, February 1st, one of my favorite pieces of work, Finding the Golden Child. The Golden Child is an aspect of our authentic self that is connected with the unique gifts, talents, and life energy that we are meant to bring into the world. The Golden Child will empower and revitalize you on all levels. Not all inner child parts are wounded, and the Golden Child cares less about perfectionism and is completely engaged in the progress and process of the present moment. If you like this podcast, please share it with a friend or drop me 5 stars on Spotify or a good review on iTunes. Blessings on your path until we meet again, and may you be in progress and not perfection.